Good day, dear listeners. Steve Preda here with the Management Blueprint podcast. And today I have with me RJ Grimshaw, the CEO and president of Unified Equipment Finance, which grew from 13 million in revenue to 18 million in 2 years. RJ sits on the board of the Equipment Leasing and Finance Association, and he is a head coach with USA Hockey. RJ, welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve. Welcome. I'm glad to be here. Real quick correction. I coach not for USA Hockey, but within USA Hockey. So I don't want to mislead anyone that I'm actually coaching the USA Hockey team. But we have actually a side note where I live is where USA Hockey is based for the whole country. And they bring in the top 20 players, 17 and 18-year-olds, every year to play for USA. And typically that's your Olympic team. So I don't want to confuse anyone or anyone think, geez, RJ's really getting ahead of himself thinking that he's coaching USA Hockey. But I am a certified level 4 coach for USA Hockey, and I've coached for close to 20 years. So it's one of my passions. I just love the sport, but more importantly, I just love, the life application you can, teach players.
Yeah, and definitely. And building a hockey team is not completely dissimilar from building an effective business team, right? Who can execute a playbook and score some profitable goals and get things moving, right?
Yeah, that's spot on. And there's a lot of parallels between team sports and business on a daily basis. So we actually search within Unify for athletes that have a background, and it doesn't have to be a high level. If they just played in high school or club or things of that nature, that means that they understand what it takes and the sacrifices, discipline, and most importantly, a compete level to strive for excellence. So I think that there's a lot of parallels between any athletics and the business world.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And when I was running my own company, I was always looking for as well. I was always welcoming former athletes because I knew that they understood how to strive and how to persevere and, how to overcome challenges, which in business and entrepreneurship are a given, right?
Yeah, and it continues to, on a daily basis, those attributes continue to be pressed more and more in the world that we live in, and what everything's been thrown at us over the last couple of years. And it seems like it's not going away anytime soon now with the other challenges relative to human capital and supply chain and things of that nature. So again, if you built those attributes at a younger age, and now you can rely on those and continue to build those muscles in regards to the adjectives that you just said, it's important.
Yeah, they say that winning is a habit. So with that, so let's start with your entrepreneurial journey. You grew up in a family business, I believe, and you got your first start with a couple of businesses. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got started and how you end up running an equipment leasing company?
Sure. I guess I picked my parents correctly because they're both entrepreneurs. My dad was a successful business owner, and my mom supported him. And one of the first businesses that they had was a mobile home park that they actually built from dirt up and built it to 40 units and maintained it for over 20 years, and then ultimately sold it out to private equity firm. And I was part of that and saw what it took in terms of discipline, evening hours, weekends, and things of that nature. I was young when they started it back in 1969. That was the year I was born, in terms of the true hard work of laying electrical and things of that nature. But I was able to witness that. And then my dad owned several businesses, and then ultimately started my brother and I in our first business at the age of 23. I was actually in the U.S. Air Force. And at that time, I was home on a family leave, and I was in his home office and saw in his home office a listing for a bar restaurant. And I said, Dad, what are you thinking about here? And he said, well, I've always dreamed of owning a bar, but I can't do it on my own, of course. So I would need someone to help me. And I said, well, you've got a eligible candidate right here. And the next morning we went for breakfast, and we met with the realtor, and lo and behold, within 6 months, I was out of the Air Force, and the timing was they were cutting back resources in the military, so the timing was great. Came back and refurbed. The building was built in 1937, so we had to do a complete refurb of the building, and we took it from concept to close to $1 million in revenues. And that was during the early 90s, when you had to become a destination point for a bar, because DWI laws and things of that nature, which are critical, made people sensitive. So that was my first entree into entrepreneurship. I did a couple, I call them side hustles, early on, but that was my first true running, setting up a corporation, meeting with an attorney, meeting with the bank, meeting with the insurance. And I really learned the value of building strong relationships and understanding supply chain with our distributors. So that was my first entree. Again, I was 23 years old, and my dad was my mentor, and weekly staff meetings, weekly update meetings regards to financials, construction, and things of that nature. So I was very blessed and fortunate to be able to watch and be part of an atmosphere with my mom and dad. And I quickly learned that it takes two to be successful in terms of understanding the role within the company. And it goes right back to the parallel that we started with in sports. You can't have, everyone can't be a quarterback. Everyone can't be a wide receiver. Everyone can't be a center on a hockey team. You have to understand your strengths and play to that.
Yeah. So RJ, how different it is to run an equipment finance, financial service company, which is owned by a banking group, from running that family-owned bar, this 1 million revenue organization?
Well, it's very similar in terms of the foundation of running any successful business. The difference is that when you're an entrepreneur, everyone has someone to answer to, right? I had my dad back then to answer to. Today, I have a boss and a board of directors I answer to. So it's very similar, other than now I'm working, and we're going to talk about this, I'm working now within the foundation and structure of another company, which is Unified, but it's the same attributes in terms of entrepreneurship, resourcefulness, being creative, managing KPIs, and things of that nature. So there's and if you can run a restaurant, I was talking about this yesterday with a buddy. If you can run a successful restaurant, and we were far from successful from a restaurant perspective, we were break even. But if you're able to do that, you pretty much can run any business, due to the fact that there's just so many different elements in a restaurant business that can go wrong or can go well. So again, I ended up in equipment financing by accident, but I'm glad I'm here, and my true why is that I'm able to help businesses across the country acquire the equipment that they need for their business. And that's what drives Unify. That's what drives myself. That's what drives our culture within our organization, to be able to help these people acquire vans, yellow iron, any equipment, woodworking equipment that they need to grow their business. And the stories, and I can go on in terms of stories of success stories. And I get chills from that, because again, that was my upbringing, and I saw what it took, hard work, and I saw what it took to make payroll, and I saw what it took, to manage your expenses and your AR and things of that nature. So I can relate when I'm dealing with business owners and understand the hard work that it takes to run a successful business.
Yeah, I think equipment finance is a great business. I like the idea of an entrepreneur being able to borrow money to grow their business without having a piece of property to pledge to, or giving a personal guarantee and signing their life away to a bank. It's a much more it's a much more constructive way of financing companies. So I really love this idea.
Yeah, and so what we try and do too, to elaborate on that a little bit, we just try and take friction out of the system, because time is of the essence. The one thing that every entrepreneur, manager, CEO, doesn't matter the title, we all have limited amount of time. And in the world we live in, we're asked to do more and more. So what we've tried to develop and continue to improve on is just taking that friction out of the system, when, especially now with the supply chain, people need to move extremely quick, or the dealer will sell that piece of equipment from underneath them. And you can't blame them, because they have to move the equipment. So we've taken that friction to be extremely quick. We're all digital in terms of documentation, or credit application documentation, invoicing. So you can pretty much do everything, a transaction right on your iPhone or your phone or tablet versus the old fashioned way of doing business. And that's what business owners want and desire. And we've been a leader in that aspect. And again, I'm not knocking a bank. They just move at a different sense of urgency than what we do, because we have two elements. We have the customer who wants to get the piece of equipment, and then we have a dealer that's selling the equipment that wants their cash, wants their money to ensure that they're going to be paid for that piece of equipment. So we're pleasing really two parties and trying to give both parties a great experience.
Yeah, you're all oiling the wheels of capitalism. I love that. So let's take a step back and talk about how you built this business. I mean, you went from 30 million to 80 million, 79 exactly. I think it's 80. I don't know. I looked at your LinkedIn profile. It was really interesting. And what were some of the resources that helped you? And specifically, I'm thinking about the management blueprint idea. Were there any frameworks or authors that inspired you, that gave you some tools that you could use to execute your business growth?
So I was fortunate enough that the business was actually started in 1978, and I'm the second president CEO, and I joined in 2013. So I had very large shoes to fill in terms of from a leadership perspective. But the good news is that I had a team in place, a foundation in place that really just needed to be re-energized and refocused of who we wanted to be and where we wanted to go. And then the Bank of Ann Arbor allowed us to be able to do that because they provided the capital to be able to go out and grow. And the value to the Bank of Ann Arbor, which is based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, they had a small footprint and they were, just from a geography perspective, limited. For Unify, gave them the opportunity to be national and deploy capital across the country and help businesses. Again, we're a commercially focused institution. So when I came in, really my first step, I went through a process, and that's the ABLE process that I mentioned on my website. A is for analyze, so really just come in and understand. And this actually started before I joined the organization. I called, former employees of the organization. I called former or current partners of the organization, and I tried to do all my research and due diligence to start building what that plan might be, that blueprint. And that takes anywhere between 90 to 120 days, because the last thing you want to do as a new leader or a new person that walks into an organization is start making changes without understanding what's already been built. And there was a great foundation already in place that I needed to leverage after I did my analyzing and things of that nature, as well as building relationships internally with the people that were already in place. And they were long tenured employees. I inherited, employees that were with the organization from day one, from 1978. And then all of a sudden they were acquired. And then all of a sudden a new president comes in. So there was a lot of change already taking place. So I had to be consistent, and it's hard work, Steve, as you know, or anyone that knows. It's really there's trials and tribulations, and then we went through a rebranding, a new platform in terms of what was needed for the business and investment, and the bank provided us that investment. But as soon as we built and understood what we wanted to do, I use the metaphor that we were a restaurant when I first joined. Okay, we found the corner to open our restaurant. We were willing to serve anyone anything. If you came in, Steve, we were excited to have you, and we were going to give you a great experience. And it didn't matter if you wanted a steak, pasta, Thai, sushi. We were going to do our best to provide you a great experience. But over time, in 14 and 15 and 16, we started to realize what we were good at. And what we were good at is being a steakhouse. Mm-hmm. And we really focused on becoming that steakhouse to ensure that we gave the best experience. And what that did for us is it allowed us to leverage, and that's the L part of ABLE, leverage and execute on being the best steakhouse that we could be. So we were able to buy our inventory cheaper, be able to cook the steaks quicker, be able to give that customer better experience. And that's taking the friction out of the system. And that's where we were able to grow from 13 million to 35 million to 70 million. And now this year we'll do close to 100 million. So it's just continuing, always tweaking, and you can take ABLE and just keep continuing to do it over and over again with any process within your organization or an organization as a whole. Is, analyze, blueprint, leverage, execute. And that's just a continuous cycle.
Okay, so I want to ask a little bit more about this ABLE framework, but first I want to reflect to something what really important that you said that the team, there was a great team already, but they just needed to be energized, and maybe that's the L. You needed to leverage that team, and this is also what I find a lot of times. I'm walking to a company and sometimes the owners feel that no one is helping them and they have to make all the decisions, and the people are not proactive and they have to take all the initiative. But what I sometimes find is that people are actually, there's a pent-up energy in this company that is waiting to be released, and they do want to be more proactive. They do want to take more action. They're willing to work harder if only someone gave them a purpose and a vision and a clear structure on how they can be successful. And I think this is what a leader is supposed to be doing: releasing that pent-up energy, giving that structure, giving that direction to people so that they can be successful, as well as everyone else in the company that wants to push things forward.
I completely agree with that. And the other piece of the analyzing is analyzing the strengths of your current team, that either you're walking into a business or I walked into this business or any other business, is understanding the strengths, and then also having that dialogue with the team in place of, one, current objectives, two, how do you like those current objectives, and then three, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What do you feel is your strength? And I had to have those conversations and then really rearrange some things. You go back to the old, good to great on the bus, make sure people are on the right seat. I had to rearrange some people and move people to where they wanted to be and what they wanted to do, and then leverage that, and then go out and recruit and bring people in to fill the other places in the organization. And again, we're far from perfect. I don't want to mislead anyone. We work at it every single day. We try and be transparent as we can with the team and allow ownership. And I will say during COVID, it really produced incredible results in terms of the ownership within the company, because to your point, we knew what we were doing. We knew who we wanted to serve. We knew where we were going. We knew how to do things. And during that time, we earned a lot of business because a lot of other institutions, and they continue to pull back, or they use what's going on as an excuse not to provide the same level of customer service. And again, that's a culture built within, and the culture is driven by the team members. As a leader, I can say and lay out a vision. However, it comes down to that E piece, the execution of the team and driving the culture and buying in. And I always say this to my team, and I say it to other people as well. If you don't feel that you want to be part of this team, that's okay. Come and let's have that conversation, figure out where you want to go, and we'll help you get there. We'll help you get to where you want to be in your career. And we've helped people, and I'm a firm believer in that. It's you have to be happy and be satisfied of what you do on a daily basis.
So RJ, so talking about ABLE blueprint, and you have a website, RJ Grimshaw, where people can look this up. I'm particularly interested. So we have analyze, blueprint, and then leverage. So and execute. So what about the leverage? So what is your conception of leveraging? What is the what is the
That's
idea?
It's a loaded question.
The process?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. It's a big word. It's a big word, but primarily, if you break it down to the Cliff Notes version, it's really the blueprint after analyzing, and it doesn't matter what business it is, but the blueprint is where you're asking, or excuse me, the analyzing is you're asking those questions to understand go to market, margins. Again, that's a loaded question, and then you build out the blueprint with the buy-in from the team. It's just not RJ or the platform. It's the buy-in of the team, and they're really building that blueprint. And the leverage piece is after you've built it, and I'll just use standard operating procedures, SOPs. You build out the SOPs, and then you're leveraging against the SOPs on what you should be doing on a daily basis. And I'm using a lot of acronyms here, but I'm a firm believer in them. And then it's what are you committing to the marketplace? Your service levels. What are you promoting, and how are you going to live by on a daily basis? And if you leverage, back to leveraging that. So it's just always leveraging different things, and then deciding if there's an SOP that needs to be fixed or enhanced. You shouldn't be leveraging that. You take that out, right? And not leverage that. So and also look at technology needs. Technology is such a critical point and part of every business. Look at what happened yesterday and how many people scrambled yesterday when Facebook went down and Instagram and WhatsApp. No one had a plan B. There was businesses, and I've been a firm believer of this. YouTube's been amazing, right? So many people are back to leveraging YouTube to build their brand. And a lot of folks are now earning a very significant a lifestyle off of YouTube. But what if YouTube went away tomorrow? They have no control over that. Same thing with Facebook. So you have to be an omni-channel or use omni-channels to be able to build your business and revenue and things of that nature. And if you're just relying on one platform, I would highly recommend find an alternative and start bringing some of your folks, to that alternative as well, because who knows if it ever went down again. It was just interesting to watch yesterday when that took place.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's you cannot rely on a single. Dan Kennedy said that one is the worst number in business. One of anything, dependence on a single salesperson or a single sales channel or a platform or a single supplier can all sink you if they go down and you don't have control over them, or they become unreasonable. They set unreasonable terms. Talking about restaurants, I had a friend who ran a very successful restaurant in Budapest, in downtown Budapest, in Hungary, and they had a good run for 10 years, and they had a 10-year lease. And when the lease was up, the owner of the property, I think, more than doubled their lease, like 2.5 times, and essentially took away their profits. And they extended for a couple of years, but then they closed the restaurant down because it's no longer a good business, because they were dependent on that single location and that landlord, and didn't own the property.
Which is very unfortunate, but it probably happens more than, especially in good times when landlords are able to do that. But we always are analyzing our revenue streams at Unify to ensure, because even over the last 8 years, we've seen and experienced an evolution of some relationships come and go, and it's always our job to ensure that we have a pipeline full of alternative opportunities. And however, we want to be proactive with that. To your example, the last thing you want to do is go out and start trying to renegotiate rents or find a new property when you're down to the wire, because that's not an abundant mindset. That's a scarcity mindset, and that's a whole nother conversation of how, when you're working on your business.
Yeah. So RJ, on our previous conversation, we talked about inspirations and people that influenced you earlier in your career, and you also showed this book that you really liked, and we both agree that Peter Drucker is a great catalyst of the whole management and business building movement from the 50s onwards. And you mentioned the book, The Effective Executive. And I wanted to ask you, what you took away from this book. What were a couple of ideas that you felt like were instrumental in you building Unify?
Well, there's so many, and this book is aged, as you can see. I've had it a long time, and it's one of those books that I go back to all the time. And I read this for the first time probably 20 years ago when I was in corporate America, just starting my leadership aspirations, and so many things. But one of the quotes that I love from multiple books, I'm not sure if it's in this book or not, is management is doing things right, leadership is doing the right things, right? And that's discipline on a daily basis of the activities as a leader that you're doing. And another great book that I absolutely love is The E-Myth. And it's a simple principle. Yeah, Peter, as you know, you want to work on the business and not in the business. And that's hard to do when you're that business owner at times. You have to be extremely disciplined and build that model. As well as I talk to our management team and our leadership team about that as well. We call them big rocks, and what big rocks are you working on a quarterly basis, because it's very easy to get tied up just in the minutia on a daily basis. And then as well as income goes up or investment goes up on a team member, we discuss return of that investment. We're fine with investing, but however, with that, we want a return on making the business better. But again, Peter Drucker is one of my all-time favorites. Entrepreneurship, and one of the other quotes he mentions is, the entrepreneur always searches for change, but then exploits the opportunity. And that's very similar to the topic of intrapreneurship. It's that same mindset that you utilize, that an entrepreneur is always looking for improvements, their mind is always racing and thinking about how they can do things, and ask, why. And that was one thing that I did when I came into Irvin and Unify. Steve, I would always pose the question, can you tell me why we do it like this? And I'm not saying it's wrong. I just want to learn and understand it. And by asking it that way, it lowers the wall of, okay, he's trying to, or she's trying to critique me, or they're trying to, no, I just want to understand it. And then ask questions, probing questions. And it pushes people out of their comfort zone at times when you start asking those probing questions, which is good, which is good.
They may not be asking themselves these questions and just doing things because it's always been done that way, but maybe it's not the best way of doing things.
Well, and I also use, again, the example of at your house, right? You become unsensitive to things in your house. And when someone walks in for the first time, they can say, well, geez, that wall needs to be painted, or boy, that carpet needs to be replaced. You become unsensitive to those things. Yes. And the other saying I say is, you can't see the label from inside the jar. And when you're inside the jar, you can't see that label. So you have to pull yourself up and above or outside and then look at things from a different perspective. And it is hard. It is very, very, very hard to do that. But you'll find successful entrepreneurs and successful people in their lives, that's one of the traits that they have.
Yes. And Peter Drucker actually talks about the process of creative destruction, and how important it is to actually, this is what we call disruption these days, when you create a product that will destroy an existing mainstream product by being maybe cheaper or more effective or more cost effective, and you create the new by destroying the old. So that's also a big concept. So I want to go back to something that you mentioned. You talk about intrapreneurship, and there are different definitions of intrapreneurship. I heard one where someone works in a big company and they run their own unit in this company, and they feel like they can. This was my concept of intrapreneurship. When I was working in a big bank, I felt like I was an intrapreneur because I was fairly autonomous. I was running my own department until the plug was pulled on me and I was pushed out. And suddenly I realized I was not an intrapreneur. I was just an employee without a job. So, but your definition of intrapreneur is much better. So what is your intrapreneurship? What do you mean by it?
Well, and there's, to your point, there's several different definitions and it means different things for different people. But I believe a true entrepreneur, when you identify one, is a person that is willing to go back and ask those questions. Why do we do it like this? And they have that mindset. And there's 5 things that to identify, an entrepreneur within your company, and that's ownership mentality. They're going to own their piece of the business. Mm-hmm. They also are people that are life learners. And everyone in your audience is watching this because they're a life learner, just like you and I, and they want to get better. They have a passion for life. They have a passion for business. They're a calculated risk taker. That's why they're an intrapreneur, not an entrepreneur. They are a risk taker, but they'd rather take that risk within the environment of another company. And then they're always looking for, process improvement. And that's back to Peter Drucker. He had a quote, efficiency is doing better what is already being done. So that it falls in the line as an entrepreneur. Now, there's key things that have to mesh with an entrepreneur in the company. They have to believe in the company. They have to believe in the culture. They have to believe in the vision, or it doesn't work, because you're going to get discretionary effort from that entrepreneur because they're more engaged and they're higher functioning than what I call a vital employee. Okay, they are very instrumental in the growth. And I actually think it's more important for smaller businesses to identify entrepreneurs within their organization versus big companies, because within big companies, they're typically doing a innovation and different things, which are very, very important. But my message is more around the smaller companies that need to stay out in front of the curve, specifically what we just experienced, okay? But also you can look at all the failures of companies. Look at Blockbuster, look at Borders, look at Kodak, how many companies that just did not innovate or do anything. And now they're realizing that. And there's so many products that were built from that. The Post-it notes was developed through an entrepreneurship program. Johnson & Johnson has an entrepreneurship program. So I'm trying to educate the small to medium-sized businesses that they can do the same thing. And it's just not around products. It's not around the next Post-it note. It's not about the next product, but it's around
about the people.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I love that ownership mentality, life learner, passion for life and business, calculated risk takers, process improvers. So this is, this is a dream employee right there. If you can find,
and they're out there. We have them at Unify, and you can't have an organization, Steve, with all entrepreneurs. That doesn't work either, right? Yeah. It'd be like everyone's an entrepreneur trying to run it doesn't work. It's back to that teamwork and understand that. But if you can identify 2 or 3, or sometimes just one, that magical one person, yeah, it's fun to watch. And I had a younger gentleman that worked for us, no longer with us, and this is one of the fears of identifying an entrepreneur, because they are so self-driven and life learner. Sometimes they feel they outgrow the organization and seek something else, which yes, I'm fine with. I'm good with that.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the reasons why organizations have essentially no choice but grow, because if they want to keep these kind of people, they have to be able to give them an opportunity, and they can only do it if they keep growing. If they don't, then they're going to lose these people, and they're going to end up with the mediocre people, and they just kind of become a mediocre organization. So it's sometimes people would like to freeze things. You're successful, you're making a couple $1 million, high margin. Small companies are often high profit margin because they found their niche, and they just want to stay there, and turn it into a lifestyle business. But then it doesn't work because they lose the momentum of growth. They lose the people that actually created that organization, or it just remains the founder, and they have to do everything themselves. So that doesn't
work. That goes against the E-Myth, because they're doing everything themselves. And at the end of the day, we know what's going to happen there. Unfortunately, they're going to get burnt out. And the value that they were trying to provide to the world now is not being provided. So it's actually a sad situation.
It is. So lots of information. I think we should stop here, because it's going to be difficult for people to absorb and take away. Less is sometimes more. So we talked about the ABLE framework that you have created, and I think it's rjgrimshaw.com, right? Mm-hmm. Where else can people learn about your work? How can they connect with you?
I would say that if you just Google RJ Grimshaw, you'll find videos. I talk about a lot of different topics. One of my other passions is social media and brand awareness, a lot about entrepreneurship. But rjgrimshaw.com is my main website. For equipment financing, our website is teamunify.com, teamunify.com. I'm on Twitter, RJG Coach. LinkedIn. I'm pretty much on all social media. just again, just trying to give back and give to the world. I've been blessed with great experiences, learned from a lot of people, and just trying to share those experiences.
Well, thanks for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom, RJ. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube. And stay tuned, because next week we'll have another exciting entrepreneurs with interesting management blueprint ideas and concepts that they will bring to you. Thank you for joining. And RJ, thanks for joining us as well.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.